This segment of Delmarva Life is brought to you by For All Seasons Behavioral Health and Rape Crisis Center.
Back to school. Listen, if you have kids, you have probably already started to hear the dread and the desperation. Anything but school. Does that sound like your preteen or maybe your elementary? A lot of students experience anxiety along with this, and it can be crippling. Beth Ann Langrel is the Chief Executive Officer for All Seasons in Easton. Thank you so much for joining us today.
For sure.
So, back to school. Why is this such a difficult time for kids?
Well, if you think about it, they're coming off of summer vacation. It's a little bit different of a schedule for our kids, and it's a shift. So anytime that kids go through a transition, there becomes a little bit of stress and anxiety, especially for our kids who might be transitioning from elementary school to middle school or middle school to high school. And so we want to just pay attention to what our child needs, and especially coming through COVID. You know, the school year last year was not your quote-unquote normal school year. And so recognizing that some kids are still working through the transition of having to be back in classrooms, having to be with kids versus be at home. And so there's a lot of stuff that comes with our children going back to school this year.
And it's not a one color to paint all kids, is it?
Absolutely not. No, you know, your child might have responded one way this year and could be responding another way this summer. And so it's important to know that how a child responds to transition may be different depending on their age. You know, you think about the preteens and the hormones that come into things, the friendship groups, what's happened over the summer, whether they've been connected at camps, if they're tired, all of those things factor in.
So is this something mom and dad can step into and help?
Absolutely. You know, I think for us as parents, we have to sit back and sort of really provide the structure our kids need. If there's one thing I say to parents, structure is so important. And the structure of kids knowing when they're going to be where, and also what it's going to look like. So, you know, making sure that if there's an orientation that's offered for the school, if your child is transitioning into a new school, make sure your child has access to that. Okay. If you can't get to that orientation, connect with the school and give your child an opportunity to walk through the school. Sometimes just saying, what do you need? Or what would make you feel like you're prepared? Some of those questions that aren't just yes or no answer questions opens up that dialogue, which can really be helpful for our kids.
And when they do talk,
listen. Listen, and give them your full attention. You know, make sure that the conversation. Brene Brown, who I do a lot of work through, is someone who says make sure you're fit for the conversation. So if you're not in a place to be able to sit and really give your child your attention, then that might not be the best time to have the conversation. Or it may be you hear something and then later in the evening you say, hey, I just want to circle back on what you said earlier today. And knowing that children might not recognize what they need, and so sometimes we need to feed that to them, and other times they're going to be able to say, no, here's exactly what I need.
So let me ask you this. I know Carol and I went through it, and I'm sure a lot of parents do, of thinking, what if this is more serious than what I think it is?
Yeah, you know, that, I think we all go through that, right? I have 2 young boys. I think that myself. I've been a mental health professional for years, and I still don't know as though I'm always going to get it right. And so I think what we need to do is we need to observe. You know, if a child is feeling anxious about something, maybe you're seeing it come out in a way of anger bursts, or they're not engaging with their friends like they used to. Maybe they're spending more time on their phone and not coming down for dinner. And so part of our job is to create opportunities where we can be checking in. And it's okay if through the midst of it, if we're not sure, you know, it really does take a village to raise kids, so checking in with a mental health professional in the community, other moms that your child is spending time with, the camp counselors, maybe the pastors in the community. There's so many avenues where you don't have to be sitting in a counseling office to have people observe and share what's happening. And it may be that you yourself are the person who is feeling the stress and anxiety. So checking to make sure that we ourselves are not projecting our anxiety and our stress onto our child. Because sometimes our kids will say, it's not a big deal, I've got it. But we feel like it's a huge deal, and so we put that onto our kids.
This is not out of control. We can do this.
Right.
Okay. All right. CEO of For All Seasons in Easton Beth Langrel, thank you so much for joining us today.
For sure.